The greatest challenge facing families attempting to stay in the middle class or to reach the middle class include the structures around how they get there. In the past, there have been many supports, governmental supports, cultural supports from families and communities, and much of that has gone away.
I think the biggest change is the middle class has to deal with a lot more risk than it used to 10 or 20 years ago. So the risk of funding their own retirement, the risk of figuring out how to make their retirement assets last a lifetime, the risks of dealing with high healthcare costs.
We've seen a huge increase in the labor force participation rate of mothers. This is an economy where in most households now both the mother and the father are working. And so what happens when you have a child? What happens when, somebody falls sick and someone needs to stay home?
The hourly wages for Americans has essentially stagnated, especially for those between about the 20th percentile of the population to about the 80th, maybe 85th percentile of the population, that very broad middle range.
More and more data is showing that families have no savings and very little wealth. And if we think about wealth as a really strong indicator of stability, that undercuts our notions of who's in the middle class and how they're able to get there and whether they can stay there.
Even somebody with a college degree today we find has a struggle to find a job. Yes, they're doing marginally better than somebody who doesn't, but even those with a college degree are graduating without jobs.
It's much more difficult for African Americans, Hispanics, and generally families of color to get into and the middle class in a way that sustains themselves there, primarily because their family finances, their wealth is so much lower.
It's time to reevaluate and reassess our entire country because we always believed as citizens that each individual could make a contribution.